Welcome to another episode of the Breakneck Podcast. I'm Matt Pashensky. I'm here with Ian Sweeney. And today, let's talk about the company that's making the most money with AI and just copy what they're doing, right? And that company at the moment is Anthropic. And their publicly reported revenue has gone from like $1 billion to $14 billion in a year or something like that. Dario has said they're making a 10x increase in revenue each year. And at the start of this year, 2026, they were 14 billion. They're now at 19 billion. That's an enormous amount of money to collect from people, right? Like there's very few companies who've ever done that. And they've done it in like a year and a half, which is just astounding. So let's look at what's working for them. Two things came across your desk that you shared with me this week. One, where we can start and just very quickly address is how to do product management in the age of AI. And then the second is, what do people actually want from Anthropic? Now, what's incredible about Anthropic is that they have 20 billion, but they also have unprecedented levels of understanding of what people actually want because they just tell Anthropic. It's very much a Google type situation where Google would tell you what they wanted and they would invest in tools to help get more of that. And it was a virtuous cycle. So starting with the product management, do you want to take a quick overview of what the product management article that they posted?
And I just want to reflect on your opening remarks there. It feels very much to me like Anthropic is a grown up in the room when we talk about large scale frontier models and kind of application in the world. I was reading some of this. There's two different topics we're going to hit, but we've also touched on our economic index before, which is an attempt to understand the impacts quantitatively to jobs and employment. And they constantly are asking the much broader question of what is the impact today and what will the impact in the future be? And it feels like more responsible than any other technology company that comes to mind, right? We're fantastic as technologists of thinking about the wonder of this new thing, but we very rarely think about the secondary and tertiary effects of these technologies and products we bring to market. And if there's ever a technology that requires us to think that way, it is AI. And it's just really remarkable to me. This is sounding like me kind of advertising for them, but it's really remarkable to me the amount of effort and resources they're putting into this. So where do we want to start, Matt? We're going to start on the product management one, or do you want to start on the...
It was written by a single product manager, and it's thoughtful. We don't need to spend a huge amount of time with it, but the essential elements that have changed is that you can go much, much faster in terms of developing product, and then second is that the technology that exists, even 3 or 4 months after you started, is so different that you really have to change how you think about product management in general, right? Because you're designing for a moving target. So now this, it's a nice report. It's a nice report. But like here, I'm going to share my screen. If you are watching the YouTube, this is a job. It was before AI. It was a very linear. You design the product. You come up with the idea for the product. I might have chosen sales and, figure out what people want. Then you design it and then you build it. And then afterwards, you're going to do all those things simultaneously because of AI. The joke here is, and I mean, Ian, maybe you get it. This is what people were drawing in 2012, 2011. It's like, oh, now with the speed of building for SaaS, all that stuff has to happen simultaneously. All of this has always been true. Is that, of course, you need to involve design and engineering at the beginning because you don't really, whereas the opportunity is determined by what the product can actually do, not just what salespeople want. So this has always been true, but now more than ever, and so
it reminds me of product management and startup land focus on delivering new products is nothing if it's not cultish. And so you can almost date people by their favorite cults. If they're a waterfall person, they're from a particular area. If there's agile there or lean startup, they're from another era. But we've always had these frameworks that promise to be the answer. And the reality is frameworks are an answer to a question or a condition or an environment. And so what is most definitely true is our environment is changing right now. And we, as people who spend our time and our effort trying to work out what the next thing is that people want to use, need to reassess the environment and look at the fundamentals of our world and adjust our processes. And you and I talked about this last week, actually. It's not just at the product management level, it's at the business level. If you're starting a business today that is of a digital nature, you need to reassess the way you do the things you need to do. And obviously, product management is not immune from being asked those questions. So really super interesting to get the the insight of somebody inside of Anthropic who has the advantage of seeing these tools and patterns probably, I don't know, 90 to 100 days ahead of us. And the scale at which they operate probably requires them to answer the process questions much earlier than let's say smaller businesses. So I actually liked this chart.
Look, this is absolutely something that should be published over and over again. Also, I could go back and find you blog posts from 2012 where it's this exact little Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's whatever is old is new again. But certainly super good advice. And honestly, I think there was a moment when you have like these technological breakthroughs where this becomes more important. And I swear, but I went in, I was, you know, I remember for the viewers notice, like Ian was a product manager that I thought was really smart. When I was learning, when I first had my first PM jobs, like, oh, Ian, that's a guy who knows how it is, right? And you know, holistic thinker. But over time, as the product management role became bigger and bigger over the 2010s, it became much more this for designers as well. I'm assuming engineers probably, but like designers and product managers, as you start to interview them, to hire them, you see them getting more and more process leaders, that they are just there to run the process. And companies desire these processes. In the venture capital environment, also, especially towards the end in 2019, you go into companies and you kind of ask the question like, how do you make money? They're like, well, we're attacking this market. It's a big market. And we're going to build the features that market needs. And we're going to do it in that order. So it's like you identify the market, you get $20 million, right? You go build those features. And the problem was there was no actual discovery or data-driven process to make sure that you were actually going to be able to deliver the engineering product and sell it to deliver that. And so the idea that, hey, we need to go back to fundamentals, but now the speed is much faster is exactly the same story that we had at the beginning of the SaaS era, maybe 2010-ish, was, hey, we have this much faster speed. What if we did all this simultaneously? We could really go and discover. And I'm assuming what's going to happen over time with AI is eventually people are going to figure out something that works, and then it will be copying. And we're going to go from this period where it's like, hey, we need to think holistically. We need to think in terms of data-driven. We need to experiment very quickly. And then you'll figure out some things that make money. And then a lot of people will make even more money doing paint by numbers that you see on the left. So we're back in that era of think critically. So it's good to see these graphs coming back up.
Yeah, I love it. You're absolutely right. Think critically. I don't know how many times I've sat in meetings where it's less of an issue now, but in the early days of Agile, where Agile was always the answer, and you're like, Waterfall is going to be 100% better right now. And just so people know what that is, Waterfall was this idea.
Waterfall's the left, Agile's the right.
Yeah, and Waterfall was just this idea. And it's totally relevant. And it's a great method to delivering products where Waterfall is like, oh, we know we're delivering this thing. And we can break that into 10 steps. Let's just do them methodically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that works really well for certain types of products. Like if you're replicating a competitor's product, Waterfall is the best way to do it. Just super, super fast. Mm-hmm. Most of startup land is what you were talking about, though. You're building something new and you think this is the right thing to do. And the resources it costs to build something are expensive. So you take small steps and you turn around and you go, look, I built a bit of it. Is this right? It is. Okay, good. I'm in the right direction. And on you go. Very smart way to do it. But both are important. But now, as you said, critical thinking is back. What has changed in our environment? Well, it was actually kind of interesting for me to read this. As you said, we have to rebuild or re-architect our processes, and that's what product people do. We're always in this world about trying to imagine the future. That's our job, and how do we, increase the probability that we deliver what we think that future is. But what's super interesting to me is that you need to do short sprints. We always say that nowadays because you don't want to go too far off track. But it wasn't short sprints because you're going too far off track. It was short sprints because the world is changing that quickly. That if you say, okay, we have this product, it's going to be 6 weeks to build this thing. We're certain, we've talked to customers, they love it. They've told us they'll pay us $1 million for this. Off you go to build it. It's not that the customer's desire or need is going to change in the 6 weeks. It's that the underlying technology is going to change.
Yeah. I think that's really the major difference between now and us old timers talking about the 15 years ago.
You old timers. Yeah. Keep going.
Look, I learned from you. This is how this podcast started. Like, you're at least more old time than me, at least in terms of not age. Who knows how old each of us are? It's just you've been doing product manager longer than I have. Seasoned, exactly, experienced. It used to be, engineers were very expensive, and now time is expensive. You're aiming for a moving target, and we talked about the Red Queen race a couple weeks back. It's just very hard to stay relevant if you go slow. And so you need to have an extremely fast OODA loop. Now, some of the things that were not common wisdom is, and they start here, build a simple tool, iterate quickly. Yeah, it involves design and engineering at the outset. Yes, of course, absolutely. These are all old-timey, hey, there's a big technological disruption. I would have an investment firm, which is anytime you see that Venn diagram of we need to do all this together, that's when you just want to start pouring money into the industry, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be figured out, and there's alpha for investors and for entrepreneurs. Once it gets back to waterfall, it's very hard to make money. It's just the companies that already make money are going to have a paint by numbers. Things that are different this time is the fact that you can build working products in a few hours. And this is outrageously different. And I've seen it. The trick is, and she mentions this, I think it was a she, that you should be putting demos in front of people. But I think the incredible difference is how sophisticated a demo can be, and they can go all the way to the customer almost instantly. We should be putting fully baked demos in front of a customer and having the customer use them within a week, I think would be the standard now. And that would have been months, right? And that very much changes, right? So you need to have these things instrumented. But it's like, going back to the old time, you need to talk to customers. But you don't need to talk to customers. You need to give customers a working product that they can play with. And I've seen this in my own business now, is that we could go from idea, like literally somebody just telling a story, you have an hour call, you're like, oh, that's awesome, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Built, refined, and to the client within 2 weeks. And again, I think that could be a week. We just need to be more aggressive.
Yeah, 100%. And we're seeing
and the outcome of that meeting, I'm thinking of one particular one recently, is the client said, I pay another company $2 million a year to do that. Let's work together. I want to replace that $2 million line item in my budget with this product. One engineer, 1 week. And then you can go out and start to develop those opportunities in your sales pipeline.
Yeah, 100%. And even just to kind of generalize this to now we'll talk about your expertise, right? Running business, operating businesses is really the friction is the interface between the humans. I know something, I have an idea that I want to convey to Matt. Right? Let me write a document and give it to Matt. Like 4 hours for Ian to write this document, 2 hours for Matt to read it twice and internalize, and then a meeting to have this conversation. Hyper inefficient, right? Demos are unbelievable in terms of the rate at which you can communicate vision, ideas, all the different factors, I suppose, that go with these products. So that's really the power here. And we did a deep episode on image generation maybe 6 months ago. And I was so excited about it because of this, the ability to convey hyper efficiently.
I feel like we should go clip that episode and pull out the section you talked about this. Is that one of the reasons you were so excited about multimodal was the key word from that episode, is that you can put multiple style communication. Because I think we had been limited 15 years ago by how well we could communicate our ideas. And I've never been fantastic at like communicating to a bunch of executives my product vision, because usually my product vision is like far weirder than they're ready to hear.
Yeah.
And so then you spend all of your time trying to like not dumb it down. I don't want to be like that egotistical, but
Well,
like
tease out the essence of it. Yeah.
the essence, right? Finding the essence of it and then putting that in a slide deck. And like, I hate doing slide decks. So it's like, I'm doing the things that I hate, which is like simplify. No. I want to like figure out what's going to happen. Now I just talk to Notebook LM and it spits out a slide deck that did that entire finding the essence. I like that. See, this is why you're good at this. Finding the essence, visualizing it, telling the backstory, because it kind of like AI is now good enough to lock into the essence of what you're talking about and build the storytelling, the diagrams. And now, since, when we talked about multimodal, we were talking, that was maybe back in October, starting in November, now building working demos with basically one shot from the exact same level of information. That's a communication breakthrough. And what you do when you communicate as a product manager is you go find more opportunities to sell. And you do that by putting these demos and these communication tools as far into the ecosystem as possible. And I think that's the operational insight.
And I want to echo what you said about your experience. Like, this stuff is happening today, literally today for us, just because it happens to be an example of one. Talk to a customer, a prospect rather, on Wednesday. Today, we're going to give them a working demo. It's kind of an AI-enabled vision type of a thing, but we're going to show it to them today, and it does more than what they asked for.
Yeah, and
like 4 days. So it is happening.
There is a key phrase, and I wrote it down, and I've heard it twice now. Gets the wheels turning, and people will just say, "That gets my wheels turning," and then I'm like, I am very sensitive to that. No one knows what AI is good at. No one believes that it's going to do stuff. But once you put these things in front of them, and it should be both built very fast, and obviously the fact that it can use AI within the product, these are all very different. And then it gets their wheels turning, then they start telling you about ways that they can give you money.
100%.
But you got to put it in front of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never felt anything like this. You build something, and oh, that's kind of neat. You build another version. Oh, that kind of is valuable. And you go back and forth. Now you can put things in front of people that they're immediately like, I want that. And if it could do this.
And they're already jumping to the next thing.
And they're already on the next thing. And by the way,
they're like, well, if it can do this, then I wanted to do that as well.
But there's no way to get that information until you put it in front of them. Anyway, so that's my feedback on this. Great job, Kat. Head of product at Claude Code at Anthropic. Clearly.
Yeah. I just want to hit the four areas and people can read it, because we kind of plowed through short sprints, so like small pieces of work, and we explained why demos. We talked about that. Revisit features with new models. Like, that underlying technology is changing so quickly that you build a feature and then you go back 90 days later and you look at it and go, well, the model can do this, so we can upgrade this feature right now. And then do the simple things. So she talked about various different hacks that they did to achieve certain things, but then the new model rolls out and you don't need to do that. So don't do kind of unnatural contortions to make a feature work. Maybe you want to just hang on a little bit, because of the models will help you. So good article. Go read it. We'll drop it in the show notes. Second one, Matt, was so it doesn't actually really have a title. I guess it's called What 81,000 People Want from AI. And again, from Anthropic. Actually, let me share my screen here, because it's quite a nice little website.
Yeah, this is I'm an old school data index marketing maker. I used to make reports like this, and the spinning globe. I mean, clearly the technology is advanced, but this gets people going.
Yeah, it does. So it's give you sort of a breakdown of what it is. They built this large-scale AI interviewer and offered it out. I didn't notice actually, but apparently to every single Claude user globally, and 81,000 or so responded. So the theme here was, what are you excited about in the context of AI, and what are you concerned about in terms of AI? Now, Matt, I can't remember. Did you get a chance to look at this or not? Because I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I looked at it. It's the things I expected.
Okay. Give us your headlines.
Well, the big one that stood out for me the most was productivity was the number one thing where AI has delivered their vision. That is not surprising that this is the
Yeah.
response from Anthropic users who have tended to use Anthropic for productivity, in particular coding productivity. Um, it was phrased a particular way. I think it's a set of drop-down questions, and productivity being the highest is the first one. The second most popular one is this is not working. So it's either productivity or not working. Now, the reason I call this one out as the most important is because OpenAI just announced that they are going to shut down a lot of their side quests and refocus on serving the enterprise. The enterprise is what procures productivity software. And Stratechery, Ben Thompson from Stratechery had a really good rant on this week on his Sharp Tech podcast he does. And people pay for productivity, but they only pay for productivity in enterprise in general. Consumers don't pay for productivity. I'll pay a whole bunch of money for a productivity app for work. And then if somebody said like $5 a month, you can have this thing that helps your personal life. I'm like, my personal life doesn't need help, man. Don't worry about it. Like, it's just a very different propensity to pay, even from someone who does pay in workplace, right? And most people, consumers, don't think about optimizing their life in that way. And that means OpenAI is now trying to chase the leader in the field, Anthropic. And that's a big change from maybe a year ago, where everybody was chasing the $800 million users that OpenAI had, and instead now OpenAI is chasing Anthropic, and it's chasing them into the enterprise. And so when you see productivity, think these are people using Anthropic for work, and they're really paying. They've gone from 0 to 20 billion very quickly. OpenAI still has a lot more consumer users, but the fact that OpenAI has now announced they're going to move towards productivity is a move towards the enterprise and is a big win for Anthropic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Again, another reason I believe Anthropic are the grown-ups in the room. They're just charting a steady course. What were my quick headlines on this? I liked the fact that it really was approaching things from the human side of things. There's a quote wall which is kind of insightful. Always makes these types of reports more impactful when you hear directly from the people. What I really appreciated about it was it captured a feeling that I actually have, which is this notion of anxiety and optimism coexisting. And the first question I asked myself when I realized that was like, okay, great. Well, what is the balance? Anxiety versus optimism. The balance is 67% of people are more optimistic than anxious, and that varies by geography. They highlight a couple of different reasons for that. So I thought that was good because I'd heard somebody recently say AI is the most hated technology ever. And I don't know if that's true or not.
Let's break down where people have this negative sentiment. So there is a chart that shows colored by sentiment towards AI, and it is near average, above average, or below average. And
the average, by the way, is 67%. So it's above that or below that.
So the places where, and this is pretty uniform, when you look at the developing world, the sentiment is uniformly in Mexico and down in Latin America, in Vietnam, India, all above that 67%. And these are not huge swings, but they're so consistent that you think there must be some kind of coherent thing behind them. If you look at the developed world, with Europe being the most developed, and, we used to say developed world was good. I think in my mind, developed world is like mostly very old people, spends a lot of time on vacations, does not have a huge amount of incentive to change their society. That's Europe for me. And so, Italy is at 64, the UK is at 63, and the US and Canada are in that middle part. Now, these are just 1 or 2% swings. So who knows how much? It's not there's a gigantic difference between these countries, but it is the countries that are, I think, most likely to benefit from the economic order getting shaken up. Man, but I'm in Ho Chi Minh City, where I used to live, and I'm making $25,000 a year because I can't get access to global markets. And suddenly here's a tool that can allow me to perform at the same level and have very different customers. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and also, I think they stated this in there. If you are in a less developed region, the fact that you're using Claude means you're probably a bit more entrepreneurial, a bit more technologically savvy. So you're taking a very particular slice of folks in those areas versus there's probably more. The population of Claude users in the US is probably a little bit more representative of the general population.
Mhm.
So you're seeing that. The other thing that struck me straight away was Europe, right? Europe being less optimistic of the is basically, let's call it North America, Europe, and the rest of the world. Rest of the world pretty optimistic. US right in the middle, sort of almost pragmatic, and then Europe, I think blue was the color, less optimistic. It's interesting to me. I don't know where that has been sourced from, that sentiment, or what has driven that sentiment.
You're the European.
Yeah, I don't know. Something happened early on with the regulation. I think we're past the peak of anxiety, of existential anxiety over AI. But when it was at its peak, I think is when they rolled out regulation, and it kind of set the tone. Is my sense in Europe.
Well, I
Now we'll
mean,
see how that.
once you don't have a national champion, then it's very easy to say, well, this is a fake technology. And look, this it's very counterproductive to social movements, which I have a lot of empathy for. I mean, I want the goals of social movements. I want more people to be empowered. But generally, these kind of social movements are very inward looking. They don't think about the development of. So I lived in Mexico for many years. I lived in Vietnam. I lived in Thailand. Right, like when I think about people who need help, it's like they're just completely locked out of technology. It's not that people are taking their jobs. They don't have jobs to begin with is the primary, in my mind, like moral problem in the world is not some factory worker in southern France, having to retire a year later or something like that, where they're literally like burning cars in the streets over that stuff, right? It's I'm much more sympathetic towards a 22-year-old in Ho Chi Minh City who's trying to go from a $20,000 a year job to a $35,000 a year job, which is absolutely like game changing. And by the way, on the margins, if you can bring on one new software developer into the global system, as an example, that person in Ho Chi Minh City is just extremely cheap relative. People are making $300,000 a year in San Francisco for entry level, and in Ho Chi Minh City they're making 35,000. And I don't know the exact numbers these days, but like anything that connects us and lowers barriers to entry for workers tends to make our overall economic system more resilient and more beneficial for everyone, and morally is much better. Europe, because it has kind of, its colonial empires failed, and then they started looking inward. They had a very terrible couple set of wars that caused the collapse of this global system they controlled. And then I think they basically have looked inward. Like, how do we improve our society? How do we stop fighting wars with each other? Which is good. They haven't fought a war with each other except for Russia and Ukraine in 70, 80 years. But I think the US, because it's always been looking for new markets and is now that global empire sends ships and money around the world a whole bunch. It's not like we're invading too many countries. Being said, we
Careful.
Paul Moran. I mean, in the scheme of
Too
things,
many. One or two,
it's
whatever.
not too many. We're not invading China yet. Like,
Yeah.
we're partnering on the most part on a person weighted basis. The U.S. mostly does trade, and only very rarely on like the number of people who trade to the U.S. versus the number we bomb. Something like less than 10%.
Keep going, keep going.
Yeah, like I don't. The thing about being American these days is like I didn't vote for that guy. I have. This is
Yeah.
not on me. Like, I didn't. This is not my problem anymore. Morally. And I do think that's what Europe probably should re-engage with other countries and stop thinking of Europe as the project, but think globally. And I think the US thinks globally. I think China thinks regionally.
Yeah, I think you kind of
I think
nailed
AI
it
is
in.
great for a lot of people. It's going to be bad for some people, but everyone's like, "Oh, we're going to lose jobs." It's like, oh, who cares if somebody who already has a $3 million house in San Francisco loses their job? It's like, go sell your house and move somewhere else. Like,
Yeah,
you'll be
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Like, there's children who are 15, 20 years old who have no access to the same type of economic opportunities. They're geniuses. And if you're going to shut down immigration to the U.S., then we need to have a replacement. And in Europe, the same. They're not letting large amounts of people from the developing
yeah,
world in. You need to have a plan for them. Come on.
yeah. I think there's something interesting what you said. So Europe is not homogenous. Let's call the US homogenous. All speak the same language, culturally very similar. Not the case in Europe, but we do have this layer over the top, which is the EU, which simulates that homogeneity. And you said that I can't remember exactly what you said. We didn't have a leader. We didn't have an Anthropic or a Claude or a Cursor or any of that stuff
Hmm.
in Europe, and so it wasn't tangible. It was like, oh shit, what the hell is this? EU goes, it's our job to sort this type of stuff out. Yeah, boom, regulation, you're safe. Oh, okay, thanks. We hadn't really thought about it. Thank you. Last week, was the last week of the week before, we talked about Jan LeCun
Hmm.
raising all this money. And you pointed out quite rightly that it's a European company. And France is investing 30 million, I think you said, in AI as well, which is amazing.
30
Huge
million.
amount.
No, they
Yeah.
invested $1 billion pre-seed in Jan LeCun's company. So
Did they?
they're turning it around. Yeah, $1 billion
I didn't
pre-seed
see
is
that.
kind of the level of investment that the U.S. is doing 20 times a year. But we talk about Europe Inc. and the return of perhaps capitalism to Europe, perhaps dynamic, charismatic leadership. I don't know if Macron's the guy who's going to lead Europe into the future. You have guys like Donald Tusk in Poland. I'm always a big
Yeah,
Poland guy.
there you
I
go.
love to see the Polish people succeed. Ireland is seemed to become a regressive tax haven that just spouts anti-capitalist. It was the perfect combination. Like, uh,
I'm not sure about that.
tax
I mean,
haven,
we're basically a mini America now.
yeah, tax haven and far left politics.
Definitely tax haven, yeah. So let's get back to the article. So the other thing that struck me was, and I forget the exact charts that kind of led me to the conclusion. There was what were people excited about? What were they optimistic about? And what was the motivation behind it? And there was, I think they said about a third to a half of all people were excited in some way around productivity. Professional excellence was another one, but there was a lot of it was really around freeing up time not to do more work, be more efficient in my work, but free up more time for non-work things.
Uh-huh.
And, the question we've been talking about for a couple of years now, everyone has is like, oh, universal basic income because we won't have a job and we're going to lose all that meaning because we don't have our jobs anymore. And it was just kind of interesting for me to see that a lot of people were saying, I kind of want to do less work,
Hmm.
which, maybe this is a really positive outcome if this actually happens that we do. Like for you and me, probably not, because I think we find a lot of meaning and lots of people do. But this idea of a bunch of people don't feel the need that they need to be in work every day. And so this actually could be a positive outcome.
Yeah, I think for society, I mean, we're having a hard time convincing people to have children, but generally giving people less work doesn't convince them to have children. It's something that is culturally we've lost for several reasons.
All right. Any other parting words of wisdom, Matt?
No, I don't. I don't have a single one. I wish I had some opening words and wisdom, but it's always great to talk to you, Ian. We'll see you next time.
Likewise, Matt. We'll land it there. See ya.